Hello and welcome back to GameSpot's coverage of E3 2013. You're watching Stage 2 and we're finishing up day 1 of the stage show with an absolute banger. Patrick Bach from DICE, thank you very much for joining me. You're going to show us off some Battlefield 4 today.
Yes, indeed. We have something really cool on the show floor. We showed some demos at the press conference, EA, and of course at the Microsoft press conference. So we have a lot of stuff.
So if we're going to show some gameplay, we have the gameplay from yesterday's conference, the multiplayer stuff, which is the first time you've shown multiplayer in Battlefield 4. Arguably the largest component of Battlefield 3, at least in terms of its lifespan, was the multiplayer component. So what we saw yesterday was showing some of the interesting dynamics in terms of terrain that can be destroyed. And for the first time, we're seeing roads and buildings actually playing a part in terms of gameplay. So what are the main focuses changing up Battlefield 4 from Battlefield 3 in terms of multiplayer?
I think you touched upon we have this concept we call Levolution. You know, very clever. We want the actual map to change and evolve as you play, and it should all be player driven. Even if it's small things like elevators, pushing buttons, changing things. We have like alarms going off. If you jump on a car, the alarm goes off, so you can spot enemies by sound. We have bigger things like holes in the roads. We have skyscrapers falling down. So it's a full scale of dynamic events that are completely player driven. And also the fact that you saw the example of the skyscraper crumbling. The flag on top actually moved down onto the ground, which changes the way you play the map, but also creating a big dust cloud that changes the visibility and the draw distance, so that, for instance, helicopter pilots have a completely different environment to fly around in, and snipers have a hard time getting to the furthest targets.
So it's a tactical advantage rather than it just being graphical trimming.
And our goal is, of course, to make a game that looks pretty. That's important for us because we think it's a part of the immersion, but even more importantly, it's supposed to be fun to play the game. And we want the players to feel like they can outsmart the enemy, not only by being a better gunslinger, but also by being better at controlling the environment and doing cool stuff.
In fact, right now we're going to see the APC coming through the...
I guess this is an example of where you actually you shoot down the supporting pillar there, taking down the tank. So you created a tank trap, and then you C4 it and take it out in a classical Battlefield moment.
So in that situation for a squad, would that be a case where someone is spotting it, waiting for the right opportunity to take him down?
You saw that the player who had shot that, he actually spotted the tank so everyone could see him coming over. So there's loads of opportunities to do cool stuff. You can see classic Battlefield moment, taking out a jeep. You have your friends helping out, both helicopters and other squad mates. We can see here another example of what we're adding. That's a lot of water gameplay. Adding boats and ships, having loads of fun with that. In multiplayer, we don't have big waves here, but in other maps we have big, huge waves, which actually get translated over the network, so everyone is playing on these rolling dunes, and it's amazing. It just plays in a very, very different way.
We saw some of that in the single-player reveal as well a couple of days ago.
Big waves. Also enhancing for the infantry soldier jumping into the water. You can now, of course, you could swim in Battlefield 3, but now you can sprint swim, you can duck underwater. You can also use your sidearm when in water, so you can actually defend yourself.
That's quite cool, because a lot of the thing in Battlefield 3 is if you were caught falling off one of the docks into the water, it was almost like a death sentence.
Sitting duck. So we spiced that up a bit, so it's actually quite fun to be in the water now. But then again, it's not about being underwater. It's a game where you're above water, you're having, doing cool stuff.
So in terms of the destructibility then, I guess it's a difficult kind of thing for you to manage, because there can be so many situations where maybe a building is destroyed and it could make a situation unplayable.
It's easy to break the game if you do too much. So it's not a technical limitation for us anymore. We have the Frostbite 3 engine. We have great designers. We figure this out. But sometimes you have to limit the destruction to create some kind of a core gameplay structure. You can see here, we have a sky bar element where you can actually spend a lot of time you saw the elevators. You have several elevators, so it's hard to guard all the elevators at the same time. So if you're trying to hold this flag, you need to be very agile and move around and watch all the elevators, because when it says bing, you know you have problems. You can see here where the commander actually comes in and he fires a tomahawk onto the tanks that have been pounding the building. It's actually player driven to take down the building. So if you shoot the supporting pillars of the building enough, it will actually crumble. So he took out the tanks here, but he was too late. So you know, the building is now starting to tilt. So it's a pre-state where everything you see the angling of the whole environment here.
When we were watching this in the GameSpot war room, the first time there was a massive cheer was when the APC fell through the ground. But when this happened, we just went, no, they're not going to make the building fall down. No.
And here's a fun fact. You hear the alarm when the building is crumbling. That's actually the fire alarm from our offices.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just, and the cool thing is that every time we play this map and this state kicks in, everyone gets really nervous. Is that the alarm or is it the game? It's actually really cool.
I just want to let this speak for itself for a second.
Yeah, this is beautiful. Let's watch this in awe.
So what would happen if you were standing on top of the
And what you see here is that the map is changing, and you get these counter knife elements as well. So it's big and small things that we're changing for the game. It's actually really, really cool.
So I have a really quick question. What would happen if you were on the building at that time when it was falling over?
You would
death?
die. Yeah, you would definitely die. Yeah. So you have to bail out before it crumbles.
Would you die in like it's sort of quite a pedantic question, really, but would you die in something hits you, or would it be like if you're at a certain point, if you hadn't jumped off, you just
you? It's a kind of a kill switch that you need to have, because otherwise you end up in what happens if you end up in the geometry, etc., etc. There's so many different things that could potentially happen. So we just set a rule on when you can bail out and when you're kind of dead. So.
Excellent. So in terms of destructibility in the environments, obviously we've seen that skyscraper and we've seen the APC come down with that supporting column. How open is that? Like you said, it can often be a problem. So is any building you see that's in reach possible to blow up, or are there specific ones?
That's back to the design decisions that we have to pull. We can't have a map where you can take down all the buildings like that, because then you lose the structure of the game. So some buildings you can destroy more, some less. All buildings have some type of destructibility, but especially around the control points where you want to have this dynamic gameplay, that's where we focus down on creating these quite intriguing elements of destruction. You can run a tank down into the metro if you destroy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And if you destroy the buildings around, you can actually open up for a tank to go down into the metro. That's quite scary when you see a tank coming down the staircases in the metro.
So tactically, it's given a lot more options as well.
You have plenty of options.
It's been a long day of interviews. I'm sure.
I'm weak. I'm sorry.
You guys did a big showing at the press conference yesterday as well. One of the things a lot of people I saw online being quite happy about was the destructibility is kind of reminiscent of what people have seen in the Bad Company series.
Yes.
And if perhaps there was one criticism of the multiplayer in Battlefield 3 was that maybe some of those elements that people really loved weren't in it. So how much was that a thought in the back of your head?
No, we agree. We agree with the community that we had too little destructibility in Battlefield 3. I think we added destruction in Battlefield Bad Company 1. And then we went further with Battlefield Bad Company 2, and for some reason people wanted the same destructibility in Battlefield 3, even though it was based on Battlefield 2 that didn't have almost any destruction at all. I think we actually created something that was too good with the Bad Company series, so people wanted that.
You shot yourselves in the foot, kind of.
Which is now something that we agree with, and we are doubling down on it, and hopefully people can see that when they see these demos, that we are making a more dynamic and more destructible environment.
If anyone has any questions for Patrick, you can tweet me at Danny O'Dwyer on Twitter, and I'm also looking at the questions coming through on the chat on the GameSpot page, so please feel free to chuck them over and I'll try and ask Patrick. I've got a lot of questions myself, though. I'm a massive fan of the Battlefield series. Vietnam, I used to play Clan Wars in, Battlefield 2. And 3 was probably was a big, I won't say a surprise, but it was a relief in a way, because I think it probably answered a lot of people's desires in terms of multiplayer. I just want to talk about single player as well for a second. You guys have shown off some scenes from the game. Battlefield 3 single player, very divisive. Some people thought it was incredibly cinematic and brave. Some of the people thought it was maybe a bit restrictive. Again, possibly talking about in relation to Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2. So with that same methodology, what are you guys thinking about in terms of the Battlefield 4 single player? Again,
we do agree that we went maybe too cinematic, too linear. Not cinematic in just bad, but cinematic in a very restricting way. So we want to go back to the roots of what Battlefield stands for, with more choice, with more Battlefield values. You know, choose vehicle or not choose vehicle, for instance. Creating more opportunity for the way you play multiplayer, where you actually use your squad. You can see that you can direct your squad. You can give them orders to, set down cover fire, for instance, so you can sneak around and attack the enemy from the side. Also, adding more vehicles to the single-player campaign, which is, of course, a hallmark of the Battlefield series.
Absolutely,
and we think that's very intriguing as well, because we love our vehicles. Why shouldn't we be able to use them in single-player? But then again, not shying away from the fact that single-player is quite different than multiplayer. We don't want to mimic multiplayer, because multiplayer is a great game in itself. Single player should and needs to be something else. It's not maybe always the same people that like single player and multiplayer, but if we can cross over and get the same core values in single player and multiplayer, I think that then we're striking the right balance between the two.
So in Battlefield 3, one of the most iconic, probably immersive scenes, which again heralds into some people thought it was too linear, other people enjoyed it cinematically, was the part where you were in the jet plane, that whole sequence. So here we're looking at some gameplay that you guys released a couple of days ago. Of a very different scene on an aircraft carrier. So can you talk about what's going on here in terms of the new additions to Battlefield 4?
So in general, you saw we went from a very tight indoors scene to a very open outdoor scene, still on a carrier, of course. You can see the dynamism where the jets are tumbling, falling down, destroying the enemy. You can see here the bomb that is rolling into the enemy nest here, exploding, taking out the enemy. And that's totally player driven, so it depends on how you want to approach this. You can also go down into the corridors under the deck, finding alternative paths through the environment. Of course, this is still a very contained experience. It's a very tight, short demo. You don't only get X amount of minutes on stage, right? So you can't show the whole width of the game. But we wanted to show bits and pieces of indoor, outdoor, and then of course vehicle gameplay, and especially showing off the new focus on boats, water, waves, which we think are really cool.
Well, this looks pretty impressive. I guess water, liquid caustics and stuff has always been one of the hardest things to achieve in terms of.
And this is something that we feel. This is again just a short snippet. It's a very shortened down version of what you will actually experience in the game. But you see that boats are using AI, so it's like having almost like a tank fight on dunes that are actually rolling, which is quite exciting, and it creates a new way of playing Battlefield. To be honest, it's really cool and interesting to. And you can see using different methods, like going from cannon to missile, switching weapons, like you do in multiplayer, where you actually go from one thing to another. And then, of course, dramatic moments to spice it up. We have a very tight narrative as well. We're working really tight with our actors, trying to get the most out of them. We want to, tell a story about people in the war rather than have like military stories within the war, which is kind of boring.
Well, Battlefield 3 seemed to be kind of going along those lines as well. It was about the horrible reality, right? That must be quite hard to do, though, because it's very difficult to talk about modern warfare without sounding like you're making some sort of a military political statement or touching on nerves that are. So how do you guys have you talked about what type of conflict we
try to stay away from real conflicts. We're not fans of war in any way. Conflicts happen, and it's people that are in these wars. Every soldier is a person, and we want to, show that people are people even if they are in these horrible situations. And how would you cope with a situation like this? And we create drama around these things and put people in horrible situations and see what happens to create interesting drama. And of course, it's an action game. It's not a simulation in a way, so it's still believable, but it's not realistic, or it's not a simulation of any kind. So we want to stay away from the actual horrors of war, but still touch upon the subject because we think it's important and we think it's very intriguing.
We've got a lot of questions in on the chat and via Twitter as well. One of the questions that people are asking, which I'm sure you hear a lot of, in fact I'm sure a lot of these questions you hear a lot of, is what are we talking about in terms of player limits on the console? The amount of players in A1 map.
Which is one of our key focuses here, because we always wanted to bring the full Battlefield experience onto consoles. Now with the new console, we're actually giving the opportunity to bring 64 players and 60 FPS to the console players. And I think that's very, very cool and intriguing, because sitting in my sofa, playing on a HD TV, perfect 5.1 audio, Battlefield quality, 64 players, 60 FPS. That's amazing.
So that'll be on Xbox One and PlayStation 4.
Yes.
And then on the other versions, there's still that's probably an architecture issue, is it?
Yeah, it's a technical limitations when it comes to, because it's easy to make a game where it's only X amount of infantry guys with a gun in their hand, but having that, adding more players, adding destruction, adding vehicles on top of that, having huge maps, you have to cut something.
Yeah.
And we took down the player count on consoles, the current generation, because we didn't want to cut destruction or vehicles, and we also wanted to have at least 24 players, which is more than most other games have.
For sure. So talking about these new consoles, well, with the Xbox One, PlayStation 4, a lot of interesting news over the past 48 hours in relation to both of those systems. One of the things that was probably the most successful, at least it seemed to be, from my standpoint, in relation to the multiplayer, was your DLC offerings in the post-launch.
Yeah.
Continuing interest in Battlefield 3, it often seemed at a point that there was a growing fan base based upon all the stuff that was coming out. Do you have a very similar plan set up for this, for Battlefield 4?
We have a similar plan. We haven't gone into any detail on exactly what we're doing with that plan, but with the new consoles, we're actually given the opportunity to do even more because of the fact that we can more easily, give new material to players. So we can update the game more easily on the new consoles. Also, restructuring parts of the Battlefield under the hood, so to speak, means that we can actually, without having too many limitations, actually update the game for you, giving you new guns, new maps, new everything, more or less.
So there'll be alternative ways we haven't seen of new content being delivered to the players. Also, there's been news, obviously, of course, Microsoft are going to be a lot more restrictive in terms of the ability to loan games to friends that are of second-hand games. EA recently has decided that they're not going to continue with the online passes.
Yeah.
When it comes to Battlefield, do you feel like that's something that benefits you, that perhaps players have been sharing their games around, or do you think that most people come to play multiplayer?
I think in general it's a good thing that we should restrict people from sharing games with each other and selling games second-hand market. But but our biggest problem is that we still have to give you an account.
Sure.
We still have a big back end that needs to create a slot for you. So we haven't really figured out how we can manage that because we need to know who you are.
Yeah.
Because you need to create a new account, because otherwise you can't really play online. So we haven't really figured out how to manage these things just yet.
Will there be any more updates to the current infrastructure you have with Battlelog in relation to the user accounts and
well, Battlelog is, we're doing a lot of changes to Battlelog in general, but we want players to have an account with us so they can track stats with their friends, they can send challenges to their friends. Also, a big new feature for us is actually moving the whole Battlelog experience onto consoles.
Okay.
So you don't have to go onto your PC to have all the benefits of Battlelog. Also, there's much more you can do with Battlelog now. For instance, you can actually change your weapon loadout on Battlelog. So you can sit on the bus and you can fiddle around with your weapon loadouts. And when you get home, boom, it's there.
Ready for it.
You can also have your laptop next to you and actually change server on the fly in Battlelog. So you don't have to go back into the game and find a new server. You can just change the server and it loads the new game in front of you.
Another very specific question. When it comes to the PC release of Battlefield 4, will you still be using the same system for launching games within the browser and whatnot?
Yes.
Great, I love it. Great answer. Very, very simple and to the point. I'm also really interested. There's been a lot of new games announced and a lot of first reveals of big first-person franchises in the past couple of days. Battlefield 3 seems to be a very direct take to steal the shine of another first-person franchise. I think it's quite reductive. I've been a fan of the Battlefield series for a long time. Battlefield 2 was a very different game to what I think most console first-person shooters are. But in many people's eyes, it seemed like a two-horse race. We're now in a situation where you've got games like Destiny, you've got Respawn's new game as well. What do you think about this new sort of first-person console space where there's multiple AAA players out there?
I think it's beneficial for everyone. You know, consumers first, of course, they get more choice. For us, we need to think about what is Battlefield really about. So we don't dilute the franchise in any way. We need to, focus down on what makes Battlefield awesome and make it even more awesome. And I think Battlefield 4 hopefully is a good, testament of that. We're doing that. I think I can't really see any downside with having multiple games being great. I'm happy for the consumer first, and I think we will step up our game to fight the competition even harder. We think we have the best game. We need to prove it.
Yeah. A lot of people in the chat as well asking about the possibilities of a beta, be it open or closed. Have you anything to talk about in relation to that?
I can't answer that question. I'm seeing good things in front of me, but I can't say anything.
How far are we from release for Battlefield 4?
Well, Battlefield 4 will be released. We know the ship date is 29th of October on PC and current-gen consoles. The next-gen consoles, we don't know the release date of the console, so we don't know. Okay,
but so by the end of the year anyway, it's November or something.
Christmas.
I don't know, Christmas.
Holidays, I don't know.
A lot of people in the chat asking if this video game, if Battlefield 4 will have a dog, if that dog will have an earpiece in it.
Well, we actually had dogs in the Fishing a Baku demo, and see what happens to them.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, they don't survive very long. If you have any more questions for Patrick, of course, please put them in the chat. People asking, will there be 3 teams playing each other in multiplayer? Well, in terms of the multiplayer modes, do you have any new modes you're going to be adding to it, or are you going to stick with Battlefield?
We actually have a couple of new modes, but I won't spoil you with that right now. You will not be able to play 3 teams, 3 full teams against each other, but you still have the we had in BO3 the squad deathmatch, right?
Yeah.
So that might be
That's your way around it.
So in general, you don't know. Anything can happen, right?
One of the other interesting additions to Battlefield 4 multiplayer, which Battlefield 2 fans will be very happy about, was the re-edition of Commander Class.
Yes.
What we saw in the stage demo yesterday was very much, it seemed to be using that through the use of a tablet.
Yes.
Can you elaborate more on the alternative uses of that? Can you use Commander Class on a normal PC or a console?
Well, in general, Commander that we used to have was good, but it wasn't perfect. It was far from perfect. So we redesigned the whole idea of what Commander should be. So now it's more of a dedicated game mode where you actually take the role as a commander playing against the other commander. So it's more like a game of chess.
Okay.
And you use the people on the ground to win over the other commander. And you have a separate progression tree, separate persistence for the commanders. You also get the different benefits if your team are doing good. So if you take a specific flag, you will get more toys to play with, for instance. So there's a lot of intriguing gameplay for the commander to do.
A lot of questions coming in from folks. A lot of questions about very specific ones. The Battlefield fans have clearly turned up. Any talk about new weapons that are available?
There are some new weapons. Honestly, I shouldn't go into detail with all the weapons because there are quite a few. I think the coolest thing is, of course, that we're adding the Chinese army to the game, which means that a lot of new
Who were in Battlefield 2?
Yeah,
the Chinese army.
No, that was we have some weapons from Battlefield 2, but most weapons are brand new, and especially the new vehicles are quite intriguing. We're also updating the vehicle park for the US Army and the Russian Army as well.
Okay. Some more questions here. Is there any, you guys alluding to any sort of indication of system requirements for the PC version of Battlefield 4?
Not right now. The better the PC, the better the game.
It looks pretty good.
It looks pretty good.
You guys make good looking video games.
Yeah, they look okay.
Looking at this is the Fishing and Baku.
Yes.
Oh, is that just the end of it? Oh
no,
this,
not
in the interest of time. So here we saw Irish, great name by the way, very much appreciated of that, and the rest of your squad. Could you talk about what's going on here as well in terms of gameplay that we may not have seen from Battlefield 3?
So in general, well, I think the one of the cool things with single player is, first of all, we can go from tight indoor action to big landscapes and more open gameplay. With a lot of choice, different routes, different weapons, different vehicles. Also the ability to direct your squad to get cover fire. I think it's really, really cool because it creates a very diverse way of playing the game, so you can find different flanking routes.
Do any of your squad have different classes, or is it a general?
Well, it's a mix actually, but they do have different roles on the battlefield. And of course, these demos are designed to show off so many different things.
Sure.
So sometimes it feels like, yeah, but where's the game? It's like a collage of different cool things. But we're trying to touch upon a lot of the bits and pieces that we're improving for the game. Everything from tempo changes, going really, really slow, to going really, really up tempo, to showing off the new AI features. Showing different vehicle types, both offensive and defensive, and of course, single player is about variation as well. So you want to go from different environments and show off different cool stuff.
One of the aspects of the Battlefield games, which is often mentioned but often forgotten as well, is your fantastic ability to create audio experiences. It's an area that's kind of, I guess, hard to talk about in a sexy, attractive way a lot of the time. Yeah. But how do you guys, in terms of your methodology for audio, how is it that you guys seem to consistently outperform other games in your class with audio?
Well, first of all, we have an amazing audio team back at DICE. They're just amazing, period. But also, I think we are actually benefiting quite a lot due to the fact that we're building a quite complicated multiplayer game.
Okay.
So it means that we have to rethink audio, we have to rethink graphics. So we can't just go in there and just do it and then turn some knobs and hope that it works. Yeah. So it's everything from how you record sound to how you mix sound in real time. And then also understanding drama and how that actually works. You can't just crank everything up to 11. You actually have to find the right ways of doing that, and doing that in real time for a multiplayer match with 64 players, that's quite hard. But once you get to that point, when you understand that beast and can control it, you can also create an amazing single player experience based on that knowledge. And also knowing what Battlefield stands for, when it the whole up tempo versus low tempo creates a lot of drama as well, and going from different environments adds a lot of detail to the audio, because otherwise if it's just a string of explosions, you get bored. It's like it's not dramatic.
They
or
lose their
interesting.
effects, or it just becomes something else.
It's all about designing a game that is about a varied experience, and having an audio team that works in the same way, and then having the technical capabilities of creating a system that can handle all of that in real time, 360 degrees, full, randomness of the battle, which happens all the time in multiplayer, and it still sounds amazing. Even to me, though I do know what they're doing, to me it's amazing what comes out through the speakers.
Clearly you guys have an incredible amount of balls in the air in comparison for creating an experience like this, and there's no doubt just from talking to you today and that you have an incredible passion for the games that you're creating. How does it feel sometimes when people, perhaps it's just maybe a byproduct of the internet, people get quite reductive about the first-person shooter experience. People talk about first-person shooters sometimes today in very negative terms, like it's a genre from a bygone era and it's only for kids who want to shoot people. How do you react to that on a personal level?
I think it's a bit naive and a bit maybe it's people that don't like the genre, and I would never fight them or try to convince them that no, you're wrong, because if you don't like it, you don't like it. I don't like some stuff either, but I wouldn't go into a debate about it, because if I don't like it, don't buy it. So to me, it's we're making a game for people like us that love to play war. We're Swedish, we're pacifists, almost. We hate war. We have great diplomats that are Swedish, but we create this fantasy of being on this battlefield, and it's a boy dream come true to create these games, and we just love to play them and love to make them. So to me, it's more about what do you like. It's a piece of fiction, and it's not a simulation. It's very important that you understand that, and I think our players know that. We don't have aggressive players playing our game. These people like you and me. I don't know if you're aggressive.
I'm pretty aggressive, man. Okay. Give me another 4 hours.
So in general, it's a playing war and having fun.
I've only got about a minute and a half left with you, Patrick, before we have to let you go. I'm just gonna quick time questions. Any new jets?
Yes.
Any interesting talk about bot support?
About
bot support, AI support in multiplayer?
No.
Mod support?
Partially.
Okay, partially? Elaborate.
We will not give you a full editor to play around with. We can't do that right now. But we'll give you more abilities to change server settings, to change the way you play the game.
Will it only be dedicated servers, or you can have custom servers?
Only dedicated servers.
Okay, is that a technology issue rather than anything else?
Both.
Okay. Class support, any new classes, any changes to the current class system?
Quite a few big changes to classes. We still have 4 classes. We're giving different abilities to the classes that you haven't had before. I won't go into detail because we don't have time.
And one more question, Battlefield 2143.
No, not right now. We don't have time.
You guys
DICE is making a Star Wars game now, so...
of course, there was the rumor yesterday. A lot of balls in the air.
Yes.
Absolutely. So one last time, can you tell the good people at home when Battlefield 4 is out and on what platforms?
Battlefield 4 is out on the 29th of October on the PS3, the Xbox 360 and the PC. For the next-gen consoles, we don't know yet. To be decided.
Okay, awesome. Patrick Bach,
thank you very
much.
Really
appreciate your time spending here at the GameSpot booth. And that wraps up day 1 of GameSpot at E3 Stage 2. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've absolutely loads of stuff to talk about tomorrow. Deadfall Adventures, Batman Arkham Origins even. Armored 3 will be here, Forza 5, bunches of stuff. So make sure you stick around tomorrow at e3.gamespot.com and twitch.tv/GameSpot E3 Stage 2. I'm going home to rest. Absolute pleasure.